I want to welcome everybody back to the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamoni, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories, along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Today, I have a very awesome guest. Her name is Jillian Scott. She's a certified trauma informed life and health coach and a creator of the Hungry for Love podcast. She specializes in empowering clients to overcome the aftermath of emotionally abusive relationships, heal their relationship with food and body, and develop unwavering self confidence and self belief. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Jillian Scott to the podcast. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, likewise. Jillian and I met about a week and a half ago. We connected through a podcast group on Facebook, and I really loved her story because she does share a lot about how there's a relationship emotionally between food and our health, and that's something that I don't feel like is very much discussed in our country right now. And she has an awesome perspective on that as part of her story. So, Jillian, I want to give you the floor to share a little bit about your backstory and just a little bit of how you got into the trauma space.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I think as with most, therapists and coaches, I got into this space out of my own personal trauma and really waking up to what was happening. And really I can trace the steps back to childhood and growing up, and from the time I was probably 7, 8-ish, I thought I was fat, thought I was overweight, I needed to lose weight, and I learned that being fat was bad and being thin and skinny and tall was good. And nobody ever really called me fat. It was really just these subtle underlying kind of things that I picked up on, right? As kids, it's not always what happens to us. And with trauma, it's not what happens to us necessarily, it's what we make it mean. And as kids, we have a very small, narrow view of the world. We're always making it about ourselves, right? And so we can develop these beliefs and these stories around, like, I'm not good enough, I'm a burden, I'm too much, I, I'm a failure. Um, it's just kind of the overarching story that we then carry with us throughout the rest of our lives. And what I found for myself was that it played out with food and with body image, it played out in relationships, and really developing a very codependent relationship with food, where it was food is going to meet my emotional needs. I'm going to feel better with food. Like, I was in a job, for example, didn't really love it. And so, in order to make a task better, I would spin around in my chair and pop open my snack drawer. And I'd be like, what'll make this task better? Some chocolate. And so, really, this like unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship with food, always wanting to lose weight, always trying to eat less and exercise harder, really, vilifying carbs and sugar, and it's the devil and I shouldn't be eating it. So then what happens when I do eat it? Well, now I feel all the shame and all the regret. And what I found is that these relationships and these cycles around food often mimic and mirror the codependent relationships we can have then with other people. We can think, well, this job is going to make me happy. And so we keep jumping from job to job. Well, this person can make me happy. So maybe we're jumping from boyfriend to boyfriend or girlfriend to girlfriend, looking for someone else to meet our own internal needs that we haven't learned how to meet for ourselves. And typically it's, and for what I've recognized and what I've realized in my life and the lives of my clients, is we learn this as a kid. It's a coping mechanism, it's a survival tool. And so the more that we can understand how these patterns play out without the shame and without the judgment and the self-loathing, the more we can actually see them for what they are, and we can break them, because these are all just habits. They're learned habits. It's a habit that you learned, which means it's a habit you can unlearn. But I love how you talk about personal power, because really that's what it stems from, is not making it about somebody else and needing to control someone else, which, for all my people pleasers out there, which I am like, recovering people pleaser right here, like A plus in that.
Me
But
too,
like,
girl.
that's right. And like, we are trying to control other people's emotions and we're trying to control their behavior. And that's not healthy. That's not our job. That's not our role. And so the more that I started to see that and how it showed up, I was like, okay, it's not just about this other person. It's, what is my role in this? What do I need to clean up? And so I kept looking for someone else, like a man in particular, to meet my own emotional needs, to make me feel special, wanted, loved, adored, when really I wasn't doing that for myself, you know? It's that whole like I have to love me before anybody else can, and I can't keep looking for somebody else to do that. And my view and belief is that's why we get stuck in these toxic patterns and these toxic cycles. It's like, well, the diet has to work. So I have to keep doing the diet and I have to keep doing it harder, and then I can lose the weight and then I can love myself. And so we villainize food, we villainize ourselves, but we do the same thing then with people. And it's like, well, if, and we could flip it to where it's like, if she's meeting your emotional needs, and let's say you're a guy, I mean, this can still happen to where it's, well, she needs to show up in this way. And if she's not, I need to fix it. I need to fix her emotions and make sure that she's showing up in a way where she can now meet my needs. And it's this really dysfunctional, codependent pattern, but it plays out in so many areas. And so the more we can see it, the more we can untangle this web, because it does happen with food and body image. It happens and it leads to emotional eating and binge eating, but it also keeps us really stuck in toxic relationships. And so really understanding how this pattern plays out in your life and in what areas is really important.
That was such a powerful intro to this podcast because you're making me reflect on my life right now.
Yeah.
And like where I came from, because not to like jump into my personal story, but you're kind of forcing it out of me. It's like I think a lot of people, like you said, we're looking for control all the time. And I've
Yes.
noticed that more as I've gotten older, that I see people younger than me, and I watch it with people that run the gamut of working 9 to 5 all the time at a job and running all over the place,
Hmm.
and we're always trying to control something. It's so funny, and we
Hmm.
don't like consciously do it. It's subconscious. Like we're
Right.
just like on
Right.
autopilot.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, like I spent most of my life, because I was brought up in a family, I won't name who it is, but they're very controlling people, and they're
Hmm.
always looking to control somebody else, tell them how they did something wrong or didn't do something
Hmm.
right. And when I broke free from that, which took a long time, by the way, like over probably 10, 15 years, I started seeing that we don't really control much in this life. Funny story.
Right.
We
Right.
we can't control that we're gonna get somewhere on time. We can't control when the
Yep.
store is gonna be open. We can't control,
Mhm.
what problems we're gonna wake up to on a Monday morning. We can't
Mhm.
predict that or control it. So,
Mhm.
where I'm at in my life now is I don't focus on controlling things. I just let them happen. And
Mhm.
I've
Mhm.
watched how when I share that with people who are in that mindset of control, like you described, it irks them really bad because they're like,
Mhm.
"Well, you gotta control this. You can't let this go." Like, um,
Right.
and so I think control is really, you said it really eloquently, like a coping mechanism. It's very
Mhm.
much a something to make you feel safe. And
Mhm.
um,
Mhm. Yep.
when we don't look at those things, and they're subconscious and just running on autopilot, we almost
Yeah.
don't know any better, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And so often it's a survival mechanism. It's how we feel safe and secure. So it's, I have these diet rules, and if I can just stick to this diet in this box and these rules, well then that's going to guarantee I lose the weight. And ultimately I want to lose the weight cuz I want to feel better about myself, right? It's always how I want to feel. We're not just losing weight for the hell of it. We're losing weight because we want to stop all of the shitty self-talk that's running on autopilot from the moment we wake up until the moment we go back to bed. And we keep thinking, well, if I change this circumstance, then I'll be nicer to myself. But what I noticed was like I could nitpick my body at 150 pounds and at 120 pounds. It didn't matter, right? Like you got to learn to love yourself now and all the way down the scale. But when you grow up with these patterns, and especially if you are in a kind of an emotionally volatile household growing up, you learn how you need to operate in order to not piss off mom, in order to not piss off dad, in order to
Mhm.
keep the peace. So you learn to be a fixer, a pleaser. You learn I have to show up in this way because then they are less likely to act out, to yell, to rage, to throw something, to, right? It's like you want to try to get their positive reactions. You want their positive things. So it's like if I can play this role and play it just right, then I'm going to get like a safe outcome. And so it's a really dysfunctional way that we grow up, but it's how we learn to survive. And we take those same like rules of operating, that same operating system, and we bring it now into like adult relationships, for example. And even though we may not want it, we recreate the patterns and we recreate these cycles and like generational cycles of trauma because we don't know any better. It is that subconscious pattern, and it's your brain that just wants to keep you safe and alive. So even if it feels painful, it's like, well, but it's familiar. And for some reason, it's like, even though it's painful, it's familiar. We know it, but it's, I know how to operate in this situation. I know how to make it better. And if we are used to having somebody else meet my needs, like if I need a man in order to make me feel pretty, loved, special, I need him in my life. So it doesn't matter what he does, what terrible things he might do or say to me. I need him because he's meeting these needs for me. So I can't walk away. I can't, walk away at a red flag or at five red flags because he's meeting things that I'm either not meeting for myself, or I don't have the awareness or even just the willingness to look at and be able to reflect on. And so often it's like, we do this for decades. Like we do this
Yeah.
for so long. So it's like this is why it's hard to break that pattern.
I love what you said there because one of my biggest things I share in the most appropriate moments with people in my life is that we're comfortable managing the crazy chaos of crap in our life, and we are uncomfortable dealing with a thing that is uncertain but will give us happiness and meet our needs. We're very
Mhm.
scared of that. And so
Mhm.
I share that. I confuse a lot of people when I say it that way, but I say it's a paradox if you see it
Yep.
because like you said, when we get brought up in an environment, like I was brought up in an environment that was very controlling, very comparative.
Mhm.
When you always live in this comparison mindset constantly, or you're always trying to keep the peace and not cause waves, you're really suppressing yourself. And at that point, by
Mhm.
the way, when you suppress it, you're having to find a coping mechanism to make yourself feel
Mhm.
happy. And oftentimes we
Yeah.
choose the thing that's unhealthy versus the thing that's healthy. And
Right.
you're reminding me a lot of this. There's a statue that I came across in my coaching many years ago, and I still to this day cannot figure out who it was or who made it. But it's a statue of a guy that is very overweight and bottom heavy, and on the top half of him, he's very like six pack, muscular kind of
Mhm.
guy. And in one hand he has a hammer, other hand he has a chisel, and he's chiseling the
Mhm.
fat off himself. And
Mhm.
so I share it a lot in my coaching practice because I tell people when you're transforming out away from these coping mechanisms, away from this emotional suppression, this environment that you're in,
Mhm.
and stepping into your power, you're just chiseling off all the stuff that wasn't yours to begin with that you took
Mm.
on. And
Yeah.
so, getting in shape, like you've hinted out a lot, I've lost 45 pounds in the last 3 years. Um,
Mhm.
I don't really care so much about how I look on the outside. It's what I feel inside that I feel
Yeah.
great. And I try to tell
Yeah.
people if you're going to try to compare yourself to whatever model person on Instagram or whatever person saying six pack abs, whatever, I mean, you're chasing something that's not even yours and you're comparing yourself
Mhm.
to something you're not aligned with. So it's really
Mhm.
that thing inside
Mhm.
you that
Mhm.
you want to hang on to.
Right. Yeah, and meeting yourself where you're at now, like if you are, mid 50s, stop comparing yourself to when you were 22, 24 years old. Like you have a different body, different experiences, you have different capabilities now. And that doesn't mean we just let ourselves go and it's like, well, whatever, I have no control. We don't play the helpless victim, but we also can't keep comparing ourselves to what we did years ago when that may not be the standard anymore and that may not be realistic. And so a lot of it is, can I meet myself right where I'm at right now and get 1% better, get a little bit better every day. And I think that's the key is like we first have to make peace with, I'm going to meet myself where I'm at. So even though maybe you're on a weight loss journey and you love ice cream or cake or candy, or you've realized like that's a coping mechanism. And every time you try to cut it out and restrict it and say no sugar, you end up binging on it later and eating like an entire cake. That's not healthy. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm going to now allow one dessert every single day because I don't need to binge on it when I can have it today and tomorrow and the day after and the day after. But it's changing how we think about it, and we have to rewire so many thought and like it's thought patterns and then like deprogramming of brainwashing. I think we've been brainwashed a lot in the diet and fitness industry. So it's like deprogramming the brainwashing, which also comes into play around how we've been conditioned growing up and the conditioned patterns we learned to survive and that helped us survive in certain certain circumstances that now we need to let go of if we really want a healthy, secure, loving relationship moving forward. And so many people are so quick to judge, he's doing this and all men suck and the dating apps are terrible and it's, women are entitled, and we want to point the finger at other people versus looking at, who am I? Why am I attracted to these people? Why am I attracting and bringing these people in? And very few
Mm.
people are actually doing the real internal work on themselves to do things differently. And that's telling. And so I have kind of unsubscribed to a lot of the dating device, or like dating advice that's out there. And because a lot of it is just doom and gloom. It's scarcity. It's all people suck. It's all, it's either all men or all women. They're this or they're that. And people just want to get together and complain. And I'm like, nope, nope, I'm done with that. So being in the post divorce, now somewhat dating space, but also like taking a break from dating, it's like this
Yeah.
weird place where I'm like, all right, I noticed for me, like I'm not at a place where I'm ready to be dating because I'm still looking for a man to meet certain emotional needs for me. And I feel like until I've learned to truly meet those for myself, I'm not going to be ready, and I'm not going to be calling in and attracting the right type of person. Like he's going to be hanging out up here and I'm going to be down here. We're like operating on two different frequencies. So I need to raise myself up. And to be honest, he's probably working to raise himself up too in all reality. Like we're all
Yeah.
working on ourselves, but it's the having the willingness to like face the hard things about yourself, to face the shadow sides, the dark sides, the parts of yourself where you're like, oh, maybe I am controlling, oh, like that doesn't feel very good. But when we can tell ourselves the truth, then we can change.
Well, that's what's really powerful, and I'm gonna put myself on blast for a minute with that one. Because
Yeah.
I went there. It's a good example of life, and I'm not ashamed to do it. Because as a coach, I try to tell people coaches don't
Yep.
have everything fixed up. That's just how it
Yeah,
is. We're
right.
living life like you. And, something I went through in my own life was I was a very controlling person a lot in my life, and
Hmm.
I never
Hmm.
understood why. That's the funny
Hmm.
part. It was subconscious, and so
Yeah.
I destroyed a lot of relationships. I destroyed a lot of
Hmm.
connections with things, and I did
Hmm.
it subconsciously. I was autopilot.
Hmm. Yep.
It wasn't really
Yep.
till I went through massive depression and losses I went through that I finally woke up and was like, okay, I got to face this.
Yeah.
I swear, just like you said, it was not comfortable to sit down and say, I'm controlling. I mean, it gives you this ick
Hmm.
feeling when you start facing
Hmm.
that shadow side. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, for those of you listening to this, if you guys don't like roller coasters like me, because when you go over the top, it's just a fear you're going to die. That's what it feels like when you face those
Yeah,
things.
right.
And you say like, I'm controlling, and you're going, oh my God, like, ugh, like,
Yeah, it's like a
am I this
free fall,
person?
your stomach goes up into your throat, and you're just like, every part of your body is tight.
Yeah. Yeah. And the crazy part is though, when I woke up to it, I didn't just say, oh, you're controlling and you have a problem. I didn't stop there. That's where
Mhm.
most people take it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
sat there and said, "What made you this person? Like
Mhm,
what led you down to
mhm,
being controlling?" And I started going down powerful questions. I always say this in coaching,
mhm.
that the quality of your questions is the quality of your answers. If you ask bad
Yeah.
questions, you will get bad answers.
Yep.
If you ask the hard questions, you will get very good answers. So
Mhm,
I went down those roads of like, what turned me into this person? Why am I
yep.
being control, or what's causing me to be controlling right now? What is
Mhm,
it?
mhm,
And I would oftentimes find that, like you said, there's a need not being met. And I'm trying to meet
mhm,
that need by
mhm,
controlling something out here in the
mhm,
external world versus going within and saying, I don't have my need met. Is this situation good for me? Why am I in
mhm,
this situation for a reason? When you start going inside, just like you're talking about, and figuring out what are my needs? What am I trying to meet right now?
mhm. Yeah.
Um, you start making really radical decisions. Like, nowadays when I do find myself in situations where I want to be controlling, I start going, this isn't the safe person for me to be around. This is not a good
Mhm,
situation for me. And then I
mhm,
tell myself, hey, I got permission right now to leave. I don't have to.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so instead of being the controlling person I used to be, I just leave. And I feel great,
Yeah.
by the way. I feel happy because I go, I just met my need for safety. I just met my need somewhere else that's giving me
Mhm,
what I would need. And
mhm,
I didn't have to become a toxic person. I didn't have to cause a problem. I didn't have to fight that person. I didn't have to do any of those
mhm,
things.
mhm.
So it's like giving ourselves permission to take back
Yeah.
control within ourselves and what we
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really powerful because I think one of the hard parts, especially as we talk about like relationships and dynamics like that, and part of my grief story is around divorce and really feeling a lot of grief, a lot of rejection there, and how I think of grief in that term because he's still alive, my ex-husband is, but it would for me it's a change of a dynamic in a relationship, and it's the loss of the hope of the future you thought you were going to have with someone. And it can be really painful. And even though I knew, like, I kept trying to change him and he didn't want to change, and he kept trying to change me and I didn't want to change, like, I knew it wasn't going to work. And yet there was still this aspect of like wanting him to fight for me, wanting him to realize that I wanted a divorce and to be like, no, let's fix this, let's work on it. And I didn't get that. And I felt rejected. It felt really painful, really awful, even though I was the one who initiated the divorce. I was the one who said it first. It was like, I'm getting what I want, and it feels terrible in this moment. And it doesn't mean that it's bad. I think sometimes we're so afraid of negative emotions, or we've been so conditioned not to feel emotions, not to feel bad, sad, stressed, frustrated. We've learned certain emotions are okay and certain ones aren't. And I think it goes gender wise too. I think a lot of men, like, they've been taught the only emotion they're allowed to have is anger or happiness. Like, and
Yeah.
then it's, well, and sometimes there's shame of like, well, you shouldn't feel that way. You should be more grateful. You should be happy for this. Like, kind of this very shaming topic. And I think a lot of women can feel that way too. But it's just kind of this resistance to negative emotions. And we have to recognize like nothing has gone wrong. It didn't mean that I wanted to stay married. It didn't mean that I wanted him back. It was just recognizing like, this physically and emotionally feels terrible in my body, and I'm getting everything that I want here. And it's not just the divorce for divorce sake. It's divorce for the hope of a future with somebody who's a better fit, somebody who complements me better, where I can see my growth and where I need to make changes. Because again, if we are both codependent in this, we are both meeting each other's needs in dysfunctional ways, it means I have my own work to do too. Like, I can't walk out and just expect to be, because I have awareness of a pattern, that anything has changed, which was a kind of a hard lesson over the last year and a half to learn. And ultimately what led to this, okay, I think I need a break from dating. Like, it's about a year post divorce. And I was like, oh my gosh, you kind of have those rock bottom moments. And thank God for those, like, truly, because it's those moments that we typically will realize, like, I need help. I need a therapist. I need a coach. I need somebody who can help me to actually figure out what the hell is going on so that I stop doing the same thing over and over and over again.
I think that's really powerful what you said because, especially talking about negative emotions, I personally don't subscribe to the thought of negative emotions because of how society views it. And so
Mhm.
I teach a lot of people in my coaching practice. I say all emotions are good. They serve a purpose. And the
Mhm.
reason I say that is emotions are messages. They're not good, bad. They're not indifferent.
Mhm.
They're also not tangible, by the way. I can't hold one in my hand right now.
Sure. Yeah.
So, so I
Yeah,
say
subjective.
yeah, so I say listen to them. And by the way, people think
Yeah.
you're crazy for this, you're not. Ask your emotions when you feel them. What am I feeling right
Yeah.
now? What's causing me
Yes.
to feel this way?
Yes.
You will, if you're very angry, by the way, very angry, you got that tight tension, you're just like this. Ask yourself, say, what's making me feel angry right now? Funny
Mhm.
story, when you get that out, all of a sudden that tension goes down
Mhm.
because you're
Yeah.
listening to yourself. And I think, building off what you said too, by the way, rock bottom. I see people that hit rock bottom, depression. I love people in those spaces. I love them
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
they're in a place where they have no other option than to face
Mhm.
themselves. And
Mhm.
those people are very brave to even allow themselves to go there because
Mhm.
they're not going to mask anything. They're at a point where it's all been stripped away. There's nothing left with themselves and their thoughts. And so they have to face
Yeah.
it. And so when you
Yeah.
get to that place, though, you can be real with yourself for once. You can finally get to that place to say, like you've been talking about on this podcast, these are my needs. They're not being met. I can't find my
Mhm.
needs over here. Where do I go find them?
Mhm.
Like, do I need a
Mhm.
therapy? Do I need a coach? Do I need a friend? Do I need a group? And they'll
Mhm.
go search that out. They'll go seek it out. They're
Mhm.
very resourceful people. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, a big question, as you brought up a few minutes ago, about coping mechanisms.
Mhm.
How can we identify those when we're running on autopilot so much during our life? What's like a good way that you've found to pick up on those coping mechanisms and not just recognize them, but maybe create a new pattern or a new belief that can shift our course.
Yeah. So when it comes to food, though, a big one that I notice is like, why am I reaching for food? So it's, am I hungry, right? Food solves hunger. Food does not solve your emotions. We like to think it does. We often associate food with emotions, even what I would call positive ones of like, I'm happy, I'm celebrating, I don't want this night to end. Let's keep going, right? So we keep eating, we keep drinking. But really, am I really hungry? Am I physically hungry? Yes or no? And if I'm not, and I'm reaching for food, I'm going into the kitchen, I'm in the pantry, then that's when you can pause and question, like, okay, well, what am I feeling right now? Or what am I hoping to feel with this food? Like, what usually there's an emotion we're trying to avoid. And then there's like kind of an inverse of that we are trying to seek out. So we want to feel relaxed. We want to feel pleasure. We want to feel joy. And so often we don't have enough joy and pleasure and adventure in our lives as a whole. We get kind of stuck in some just different patterns and routines and systems, and it's like, or we get stuck in shame and thinking, well, I should be further along, I should be more, I should be doing this, I'm not enough. And so now it's, food will quiet out that internal voice. Food is the distraction, and we can do it with alcohol. So we can look at, like, did I plan to drink tonight? No. Okay, why am I pouring a glass of wine, or why am I opening a beer? So a lot of it comes from being intentional with having a plan of like, okay, what's my rough plan to eat or drink, even if it's just like in your head. I think a lot of times we wake up in the morning, right? And we're like, oh, like, okay, I'm not going to drink today. But then 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock rolls around, and you're like, oh, I could go for a drink. That sounds pretty good. Or, and it's like we just have to understand, like, okay, what am I reaching for? Why is it there? I started doing this even with a dating app. I had to recognize, like, why do I keep swiping for a dating app? Why am I reaching for that? Why am I turning to that? And it's because there's a hit of dopamine when somebody likes you and see who responds, and when you also think of love bombing as real love, right? It's like you're looking for intensity, you're looking for a lot really quick, really fast, and it feels really amazing. And it's like that has been a big learning point for me of recognizing when I'm doing that, when I'm seeking out love bombing, because I mistakenly think that's real love. And I have to tell myself, like, this is not love, but it feels like it. It's like it's fake love, it's faux, it's
Yeah.
imposter love. But it's like it's kind of understanding, it's asking that why question. And that's why, like, I won't tell people what to eat. I'll help them lose weight, but I'm not here to tell you what you can and can't eat. I'm here to help you understand why. Like, I don't want to follow you around and smack cookies out of your hand all day. I want to help you understand, why are you reaching for that cookie? Do you actually want to eat it? And sometimes it's a yes. Like, I planned it. It's intentional. I want to eat this cookie. And sometimes it's, I'm procrastinating. Sometimes it's, I'm bored, I'm
I
stressed,
love
I'm
that.
lonely, I'm looking for something else, or I'm just looking for a little fun and a little joy in my life. Like, oh, what's wrong with a cookie, versus like actually creating a life full of fun and joy and pleasure in other areas.
I think that's really powerful what she said because I've been a big snacker over my life. I'm not gonna lie, and
Yeah.
that contributed to my 249 weight 5 years ago. Not gonna lie,
Hmm.
and I still have that picture and I laugh at because I just cannot believe I ballooned up like that. But yeah, to your point,
Yeah.
food's a comfort thing.
Hmm.
I'll admit that when I get bored at night or something, and I'm just like watching Netflix for an hour, I'll get bored and be like, okay, now I'm gonna go. I find myself in the kitchen, and I'm like, okay, I don't
Hmm.
have what I want. And then you kind of get into this place of
Yeah.
like, well, why am I there? Like now I don't
Yeah.
have what I want. So now I'm even more frustrated because
Yeah.
Netflix ain't
Right.
satisfying it, food's not satisfying it, and then it becomes like, what am I really looking for?
Yeah.
What's gonna make me happy down here? Um, I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I think today what's really hard in society is that we have so many options. It is
Uh-huh.
insane when you go to the store. I mean, you can have everything from crap snack food to healthy snack food to
Uh-huh.
chocolates to candy. I mean, my God,
Mhm.
you have 20,000 options. And the worst part is, by the way, we have a cell phone that we can DoorDash whatever we want. So we don't have to leave the
Yep.
couch. And so now
Yeah.
it's like right
Right.
at the fingertips, right?
Yep.
So then there's this like sense of, how much self-control do we have at that point to say, I don't
Hmm.
have to get in my car and drive, somebody can bring it to me. So I don't have to
Hmm.
wait.
Even
Um,
easier.
Even
Yes.
easier. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like again, it's like it's learned. We learn, and that's what our brain and our habit brain is wired for. So I call it our habit brain that lives in the back, and it wants to seek pleasure, avoid pain, be the path of least resistance. And the pain can be real or perceived, and it's mental, physical, or emotional. And so often, I think we're so used to these like extreme heightened states. Think about like news is really extreme. We have these insatiable headlines, and we're used to like big scary theatrics or love or things that are going to shock and awe, and we're like so used to this like really high of living in that. And then when we're living in kind of like a normal place of calm and peace and what should feel normal, we're like, this doesn't feel good, this isn't enough, this is weird, like I need something else. And then we're searching for food, or searching for something else to be that source of comfort. And sometimes that goes back to childhood. We can have, like there can be food as a reward, there can be food taking away food as punishment. It can feel nostalgic, remind you of a grandparent or a parent, especially if they've passed away. It's like this is what connects us. So there's a lot of nuance that we have around food with emotions in our lives, and sometimes it's positive, and sometimes it comes from scarcity and lack, and it's really understanding those stories of, hey, why am I eating this? Or why do I not want to throw away these 2 bites of food that probably cost like 20 cents, but I'm really not hungry? And I'm telling myself, well, I don't want to waste the food. So I'm going to go ahead and eat it. So now I'm going to overeat and waste the food in my body. And when I tell clients that of like overeating is wasting food, it brings a new perspective because they typically don't think about it that way. Like, but throwing it away is much better for your body because overfeeding it does it no good.
yeah, that's, I can definitely attest to that on my journey of things because I go through periods where I'll eat like a lot of sugar and then I'll just stop. And something
Mhm.
I've caught on to our bodies, by the way, I swear sugar is just as addictive as certain drugs on the market. Because if you go 3 days without having any sugar at all, my God, you will have a raging headache like no tomorrow. And it will not
Mhm.
go away for, 3, 4, 5 days. And
Mhm.
so I think what's really a struggle in today's society too is that we have so many dopamine hits going on constantly. I mean,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
smartphones, sugar,
Right.
um, all our food we eat, we almost get overstimulated and our brain is
Yep.
just like
Yep.
5,000 miles an hour. So when we do end up in
Mhm.
that bored place, I call it that,
Yep.
it's not that we're bored, by the way. We just don't like the feeling of coming down to where normalcy actually is.
Right. Yeah.
We're like, well, we gotta check my phone 500 times a day. Oh, I gotta have
Yep.
a 4 shot coffee with 10 pounds of sugar in it at Starbucks. Um, and
Yeah.
and you're running jacked all day long until about 8 o'clock at night when your body's like, okay, we've ridden the high of dopamine too long. Time to come down. And
Yeah.
I've tried to learn in my own personal journey. I can't hit those things anymore because my body gets anxiety and out of whack and all this
Mhm.
stuff. So I can't
Mhm.
do that anymore. But I try to share
Mhm.
with people those roller coasters you have with food like that. They do attribute a lot to your emotional responses in
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
When you get really impatient really quick, you can't stand waiting for something. That's all that stuff you're putting in your body that's actually causing that to
Mhm.
happen. And you're training
Mhm.
yourself when you're giving yourself all those things constantly, that you're training your dopamine sensors to light off 24/7. So much so that normal everyday pleasure that should be normal and fine just feels boring to you anymore.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel like it's
Mhm.
serving a need for you. So it
Mhm.
it makes you want to chase those needs in a lot of other places.
Yes,
So
yes, exactly. Yeah. And when it's so normal and natural, it's like then we jump from one coping mechanism to the next. So it's like we stop the emotional eating or binge eating, but now we're drinking. And then we stop the drinking, but now we're spending and we're overspending. And then we stop that and now we're seeking for it with dating apps or an affair or something else. And I think it's really easy to buffer, and it's making somebody or something else responsible to for making you happy versus you insourcing that and deciding like I'm in control of my thoughts, I'm in control of my emotions, and I am now going to fill my world with people and things that I want and that I enjoy, but also recognize like, yeah, food can't be my primary source of joy. Just like, an ex-boyfriend couldn't be the primary source of praise and validation for me. I had to be that for myself. And that's why I think breakups can be so hard and so messy. I remember being completely heartbroken, like crying on the bathroom floor over a guy I dated for 3 months. Like 3 months, it wasn't even that
Yeah.
long. But things we were like, there was love bombing, I think, from both of us. It was like very intense, very quick. And I think there was still some processing of the divorce after that. But it was like I was so used to having this person there to meet certain needs. And I couldn't see it at the time. But it's like that's why it feels so hard. And that's why we're so quick to jump back into dating again without understanding the patterns, but just to keep repeating them over and over again. And so that's been one of the things I've noticed in myself, and where I really help clients too, is to recognize the patterns so that they can trust themselves, right? It's like I want to trust myself around
Yeah.
food, around alcohol, around dating and people. Like I want to trust that I can see red flags and walk away. I want to trust that I can know this isn't the right fit, and he might be a great guy, but we're just not the right fit, and I can walk away. And we can only do that when we are meeting our own needs. But if he's not the right one, but he's meeting the needs for you that you're not meeting for yourself, of course you're going to stick around, at least until someone better comes along.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing you've talked about today is meeting our needs because that's something that I was guilty of that for so many years and I actually get looked at weird by people now because I've come to this
Mhm.
place where I meet my needs by myself. I don't look for it
Mhm.
elsewhere. And
Mhm.
when you're not used to that, by the way, and I will share that's a recent thing I've done in the last 3 years, it is
Yeah.
very turbulent because you start kind of going,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't need all that stuff at the store. Yeah, I don't need to shop on Amazon today. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need to go out and drink with so and so. I'm good.
Yeah.
You start kind of like questioning yourself constantly,
Mhm.
because you're breaking that coping mechanism because you've been taught to
Mhm.
go external versus internal.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I think the internal one is just really hard because we've been wired as a society to look external for everything.
Yep.
And that's why we end up in people pleasing things. That's why we end up in bad relationships. And it's not always, by
Mhm.
the way, that it's someone's fault, but it's that pattern that happened is what we led with to get that need met.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when we can actually say, like, sit down and say, these are my needs, they're not being met. How can I meet them? And
Mhm.
really open ourselves up and say, I'm going to try
Mhm.
this over here. And I always tell people too, because the biggest thing I come across with a lot of people is they don't like change. I love it. I
Yeah.
love when people say, I don't like change. And I always combat them and say, how often do you get a new cell phone? Oh, I buy one every year. Say, awesome. How many times do you buy a new car? Every 3 years. Awesome. How often do you buy a house or change apartment? Every 1 to 5 years. I said, you
Mhm.
change, you just don't get it. I said, the
Yeah.
reality is you change. So I always say,
Yep.
it's not scary. You're just unfamiliar with it. So
Mhm.
if we take the
Mhm.
subconscious and make it conscious, now you're aware. And that's where we
Yes.
can step in our power, by the way. We can
Yep.
say, no, I have a choice. I get to decide. This is my
Mhm.
life. These are my needs.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then you feel empowered and you're not seeking all that stuff. You actually end up
Mhm.
breaking away from it without feeling guilt, without feeling shame, without having to blame people. You can literally just take control of your life back. Um,
Right, right. Yeah, and stop living on autopilot. And I think that's where so many of us live, is we don't realize it, right? But like we just live on this default setting of autopilot over and over again until we take the subconscious and make it conscious, right? Like that's one of my favorite quotes of like, otherwise it directs your life and you call it fate, and we're like, this is, or God's will, and this is just destined and meant to be. And really it's like, oh no, like I created that. And I think when we can own it and look at how did I create this, not from a shameful place, but from curiosity and compassion and self love, then now we have ownership. Because if somebody else created it, now I'm at the mercy of somebody else. Someone else has to fix it. I need to try to control them to get them to fix it. And now I'm afraid, or now I'm scared because now I need other people to show up and play a role, when really, if it's me, if I'm the problem, well, I get to be the solution and I can control me. Right. So, just kind of
exactly.
like what you said in your intro of like, you take back your power, you insource and you find all of that. That's huge. And it's not that we take the blame, that we, I think there are times where it's like, I'm willing to be the villain. I'm willing to be seen as the bad guy and to
Hmm.
be portrayed that way. Like there are times when I'm going to be willing to be seen that way. And it's not going to impact my self-worth, my self-confidence, but it's okay if other people see me that way. My willingness to feel misunderstood has had to skyrocket in the last like
Yeah.
2 years, of just like the willingness to be completely misunderstood, to feel like this is so unfair. This is not right. And to be okay with that and to not keep trying to change somebody's mind and to to let them, right? Let them think what they want, let them do what they want, let them be who they are and stop trying to fight it, stop trying to control it. And I think that's as like there are little subtle things that I'll pick up now in dating and in just even talking with men, for example. And one guy I was talking to, he had said something like you can change me. I want to be changed. You know, if you see something in me that needs to be changed. Well, number one, that was a lie. He actually was not receptive to any feedback. So, like
Yeah.
don't listen to what people say. Look at what they do, look at their actions, because they will show you who they really are very quickly. But number two, I was also like, I don't want to be with somebody that I feel the need to change. Like, that's not my job. I want to love and accept somebody for who they are, not the potential, not who they could be if only they did X, Y, and Z. Like, I want to love and accept them for them now, here in this moment, just like I want to be loved and accepted for me here in this moment. Right. And it's like when you can find people where they are both meeting their own needs and then they come together and they can love and accept you, it's not that you're fully healed or at this final destination, but it's like there's a level of personal growth that's already happened to where now you can move together in your growth journey as a couple. And it doesn't mean you have to be divorced in order to do this. You can like you can be a married couple and doing this together, but I think there is a foundational level with any couples counseling. Any couple that comes to me, I'm always suggesting start with individual counseling first and then move to something as a couple. But there's foundational things that guarantee each of you need to work on.
That's really beautifully said. You're the first person I've heard say that, and I could not agree more with you on that front because, I've heard of people going to marriage counseling, and it turns into this like, well, you did this, well, you did that, well, you did
Yeah.
this, you have to change, you have to figure this out, and I'm sitting there going, well, now we're just pointing fingers and firing missiles at each other,
Yep.
and now we've just got destruction on both ends, and nobody walked away from that, by the way, saying, well, I guess I could probably try to change this about myself, or I would love to meet your needs. Those conversations aren't even on the table at that point.
Right. Right.
Um, so I've embraced this thing with David Goggins, and I always paraphrase because the man loves to cuss, and I accept it. But one thing he said, one thing he said in one of his podcasts that I thought was really profound, and it helped me on my healing journey since we're talking about this topic, is he said, I realize that we're all messed up. All of us are. I'm just paraphrasing to be kind to the audience, but he
Yeah.
said, we're all messed up. The only difference is you hit it better than me. And he said, the reason I
Uh-huh.
get so much hate is because I'm willing to go in. I'm willing to look at myself and say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm messed up. I got problems.
Yep.
It was really breaking for me to hear somebody come out so strong and so bold to say they're messed up. And I didn't take it in that like goofy way most people do, but he was literally talking about these are flaws in me. I have flaws. I'm a very flawed
Yeah.
person. And he was able to address them and say, this is my flaw. This is what I've struggled
Mhm.
with.
Mhm.
And when he talked about my dad beat me within an inch of my life the whole time growing up, I have bruises all over my body. I'm a sick person today because of that experience. And I push myself
Yeah.
to a physical limit. I push myself into pain. I caused harm to my body because of that thing that happened way back here. Um,
Yep.
and so he was talking about with people that, we can oftentimes see people fully put together, like they look great and everything. But deep down inside, there's trauma from that past that's still there and it will always come out. Um,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
wanted to ask you, as you talked about a little bit ago, but I want to ask you about that feeling of rejection through that divorce process. I wanted to ask you about that because I've gone through a lot of rejection in my life, more than I ever care to know
Mhm.
about. I still have issues working through that myself, but I know a lot of people out there do not like rejection. It's one of those words
Mhm.
that if you breathe it to somebody, it's
Mhm.
like, oh my God, like, no, get
Yeah.
this away thing. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about how did you work through that and what did you learn through that experience?
Yeah. So, I think rejection is a part of grief sometimes. It depends on like the context that we're talking about it in, but I see grief as this very complex mix of emotions. It's not like a singular thing. It's this like chemical cocktail almost. And so for me, rejection was often it kind of became a part of that grief story. And so it was like this sinking pit in my stomach. And it was kind of like this, I'm not enough. I'm unwanted. He really doesn't love me. I'm not lovable. And it was part of it was this story. And it was just this like this real heaviness. And so that's how I experienced it in my body. And by allowing it, and this was a big thing, was I was working with a coach and she was really helping me to process my emotions. We didn't talk like really anything legal, and I think that was like a really cool, like what a wonderful experience to work with a divorce coach where we really talked like little to nothing legal. And it was all, how do I build my confidence? How do I manage my emotions through this? How do I like feel empowered throughout this, even when it hurts, even when it's painful, even when I feel bitter and resentful at other people celebrating 10, 12, 15-year anniversaries. And I think that should have been me. What's like, why did I get this raw deal? And part of it is allowing it. And it's being willing to feel the physical sensations. And that's all an emotion is. It's a physical vibration in our body. And we just have to be willing to feel it and to process it, to like sit with it, to allow it to be there. And so the way I like to think of it is it's going to come with me. It might be in the passenger seat. Eventually it's going to move to the back seat. It's going to be there, but it's not going to drive the boat. It's not going to drive my car. It's going to be
Yeah.
along for the ride, and I'm going to take it with me in what I do. And it was something where the more that I could allow it, the more it dissipated. And so I think about it kind of like with grief, with loss, there's agony, there's anguish, and the more we can just allow it to be there and stop fighting and resisting, stop turning to food or alcohol or a dating app or something else to distract us, if I can just be there with this, the more it dissipates and it becomes easier and easier to go through. But it took about 2 weeks for it to like fully go away, even though it was like, this was what I wanted, this was what I knew needed to happen. It's hard I still kind of struggle with like, kind of, I wanted the divorce, but I didn't really want divorce. I didn't want that for my marriage. But I also knew there was no possible way we could move forward in a healthy, useful way for either of us. Like the last, if I had any indicator of what the next 10 years was going to look like, it was the previous 10 years. And I wasn't willing to risk that. I didn't want that. I didn't want that for me, and I didn't want that for my son. That would not be helpful and useful for him to grow up with his parents like that. And so for me, it was like, I know this is the right choice. And I think that was a lot of what got me through, was trusting God, trusting a higher power, trusting that there was a reason for this, that I can't see it now in this moment, but I'm going to be able to look back at some point in the future. It might take me 5 years, but I guarantee I'm going to look back and I'm going to be, and then I'm going to understand. I'm going to be able to connect those dots. And I'm going to be so proud of myself for being willing and courageous to step out and to say, I don't want this for myself anymore. Even when, and as a Christian, like in the church, the message is God hates divorce. You don't get, like, divorce is not an option. And for a long time, that's what I said. And I had to recognize, no, divorce has to be an option. And I think that's a healthier way of doing it, rather than like you're trapped and chained to this person for the rest of your life. I don't think we want to be choosing divorce flippantly. I don't think it needs to be a first resort. But when you spend years and years and years struggling, like, there comes a point where you have to accept, like, maybe this is just not the right fit. Maybe we just don't work well as a married couple. And now on the other end as co-parents, we get along so much better. like it is
See,
so much better. We can actually have like friendly conversations at the gym, to where somebody asked if I was like if that was my boyfriend, and I was like, no, that's my ex-husband. And people are like surprised. They're like, oh, wow, you like kind of get along. Like, oh, this is weird. And I think there's still some aspects of like, I know what his buttons are and I try not to push them, kind of thing, but it's like, I'm no longer trying to control him. Not my monkey, not my circus anymore. And he's no longer trying to control me. And I think he thinks the same thing of me, right? Like, I'm not his monkey, I'm not his
yeah.
circus anymore. And so, being on the outside, on the other side of it too, I can see it more. But it's like, we've got to allow waves of rejection, just like we allow waves of grief. And the more we can allow it, the more we move through it, the faster we process through it. So then the next wave of like grief, rejection, bitterness came. It's like 4 or 6, I think it was like 4 weeks later, and it passed in like a day. Instead of 2 weeks, now it's a day. And then the next one came like 6 weeks later. And then it passed in like an hour. So it's like it gets easier and easier to move through it the more that you allow it and you just sit with it. And it's like, this feels terrible, and that's okay. Like, I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to try to seek something else to feel better. And it's a learned, but it's also a conscious decision that we have to make for that.
I think that's really powerful what you said, and I'm sitting here probably like some of my listeners right now saying like sitting with rejection is just an awful feeling. Like it's just,
Yeah.
and I worked in mortgages for 8 years prior to becoming a coach, and I saw
Mm,
people go through divorce. I saw the ugly,
yeah.
nasty side of things. I saw the opposite side where people just said we just weren't a good fit together. I don't have hard
Hmm.
feelings, like just we weren't
Hmm.
meant to go. Um,
Hmm.
and so I sit there and say, rejection, as I've come to learn, is very much a redirection of things. And
Yes.
your story about what you went through, by the way, it hits on the biggest thing I share with people in my coaching practice, that everything we experience, it's not good or bad. I try to step away from
Hmm.
that and I say,
Hmm.
there's always a gift, a lesson, or a blessing that will come out of this. And you may not see it right away. And I don't
Yep.
expect people in the depths of it to see
Yep.
those things because you won't.
Right.
And so,
Right.
but I mean, I think about how, from the sound of it, it looks like that marriage was just really not going well for you guys at a certain point,
Hmm.
and you were really
Hmm.
faced with, do I risk it another 10 years and hope and pray and wish this turns out, but it's going to go down a
Hmm.
very controlling road. And who knows what's going to happen at that point. And I have a
Hmm.
child involved in this too. So now I've got double pressure. Or do I
Hmm.
say, I'm going to take the risk with the unknown
Hmm.
and go through with this
Yeah.
divorce, give myself a chance to be happy, give him a chance to be happy, keep my
Yeah.
son in a better situation. Am I going to take the risk? And
Yeah.
um, I can say, from what you've shared today on the podcast, that that divorce was not just a gift, but it was also a lesson for you. It was also a blessing
Yep.
in a lot of ways. And
Yep.
so, from what it sounds like, there wasn't actually much terrible that came out of that. It was actually more good than bad.
Yeah, yeah, and it was like an emotionally tough summer that we went through, but we were divorced in just over 3 months. It was very quick, quicker than I had anticipated, like to the point where I was like, I'm not ready for this. Like, can I really do this? But it's, and this is where like I think for me, like I just had to lean on my faith and trust, like this is all happening for me. And this is all happening in the right timing. And just like you said with control, I think so often we try to control the timing, we try to control when things happen, and we can't. And so sometimes they take longer than we want or we anticipate. And or I think about like dating, and it's like I want to find my person right now. And it's like, can I let go and trust that like maybe he'll come in the next year? Maybe he'll come in the next 5 years. Like, can I be patient and learn to love and enjoy my life as I'm waiting for this thing to happen? And I think that's a big piece that feels really confusing for people because I talk about weight loss like that of like, can you enjoy the process and your life while you're losing weight? And so often we think we can't because weight loss is often restriction, or divorce means life sucks and it's terrible and we have to like struggle through it. So we're always in this like hurry up and get it done because we think that there is going to be better. And it's not necessarily, it's what you make it, right? And so it's the more that we can
Yeah.
allow and just yeah, breathe into it, we can lean into it, and like you said, like take the lessons because it will change you. And sometimes we don't see why we're supposed to be somewhere. We don't, it's like years later that we fully recognize and connect the dots and see, oh, like sometimes you're not even in this position for you. You're there because you're going to help somebody else. And I think that's been really cool for me to see is how God has used me and my story in many ways over the last, 10 years to speak into other people's lives and to help them through things that like I didn't even know was happening.
I love that you are faith-based, by the way. I started my journey on that 5 years ago. Funny story. And when I lost my child, I got really angry at God. I yelled at him, and
Yeah.
I share that with
Yeah.
people. God's not this person you need to talk to nice all the time. He's also there to listen to
Yep.
you when you're going through stuff.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
and talk about control, I'll share really quickly. There was a day I yelled at this cross that fell on my trees on my property in New Hampshire, and I yelled at God for 20 minutes, cussing, screaming, all sorts of things. And I cried. I
Yeah.
cried like a little kid. And
Yeah.
I told him one day, I said, I'm done with control after I had that little fit, and well,
Mhm.
people driving by looking at me like I was a weirdo.
Right.
And but I told him, I said, I give up control of my life right now, giving it up, all of
Mhm.
it. And I
Mhm.
told him, I said, I'm no longer going to force, push, pull, whatever it is. I said, you
Mhm.
show me the path. And I
Mhm.
kid you not, I can't really explain it to a lot of people, but God made certain things happen for me. He put me
Yep.
in certain places. I saw that my son passing, people are gonna think I'm crazy for saying this. That happened for me. That didn't happen to me. Losing my son
Yeah.
was not a horrible, tragic, awful, disgusting thing. It wasn't that. My son was a beautiful gift that came through the world.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm able to help people in this grief space now, in this trauma space.
Yeah.
He's given me such a beautiful gift. And I saw that through your divorce story today. I heard it when you say how you coach
Mhm.
people through food. I just
Mhm.
like I see the gifts that come through this faith in a higher power. And I'm not saying everybody has to have that journey because hey, it happened to me 5 years ago. It might have happened to you a lot sooner than it did for me. Um,
Mhm.
but I just say that, there's always something bigger than us in the world pushing things
Mhm.
around. And
Mhm.
something I try to keep in mind as a coach too, by the way, is like I run into different people from different worlds, different cultures, different belief systems all day long. And I always try
Mhm.
to say that whoever we run into to help and serve, God put us in front of them for a reason. We didn't cross these people by
Mhm.
accident.
Yeah.
We're meant to cross paths. And
Yeah.
when you think about that, we're meant to cross paths. There's a bigger purpose and a bigger serve
Mhm.
behind that. And so
Mhm.
it's really an honor, by the way, for us to come into people's lives as well as leave people's lives. And I think as coaches, you can relate to this that we're in somebody's life for a short or long period of time, depending on
Yeah.
where they're at. But when that time is done, it's okay. There's no hard feelings. There's no, this is
Right.
over. This is like a celebration of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my year or my word for like the last, I don't know, 9 or 10 months has been surrender. And like,
Mm.
can I surrender to God? Can I surrender to his timing, his will, his plan and follow him? And this has been big was like, all right, you put these dreams and desires and goals and things on my heart and I'm going to trust that they're going to come and I'm going to surrender to the timeline and I'm going to surrender to your will and I'm going to keep walking and keep taking steps and keep trusting. And one of my favorite quotes is sometimes God takes you where you don't want to go to create in you what couldn't have been done any other way. And I see that time and time again in my life of God takes me to a place where it's like I didn't want to be here. Like I don't want to be here. I didn't think this was the plan. Why am I here, God? And it's because that's what was needed in order to get that next domino to fall. And again, it's like we can't see that in the moment, but this is where faith is built. It's where trust is built, and this is where you also have to learn to retrust yourself. And I think that's probably a big thing. And I think for a lot of people going through grief, there can probably feel some guilt, some shame, some regret. And it's learning to trust yourself, learning to trust your decisions, learning to trust um, your gut instincts, things like that. It's important that we learn to really develop that skill again.
Yeah, because the big thing that happens to us in grief and loss and trauma, and I'm sure you felt this in going through a divorce, the thing that most people don't understand about people in those situations, they are extremely vulnerable people.
Yeah.
We've had our world shattered, like dropping
Yep.
a glass on the pavement. Our world is
Yep.
gone, and we're
Mhm.
now in this place of rebuilding. We're in this place of
Mhm.
self-discovery. We're in this place of cleaning up this mess in our backyard, saying,
Mhm.
is this what I want to keep? Do I want to toss? Is this the thing that I
Mhm.
pitch or I keep? And when we're in that place, by the way, we're so vulnerable to take in all these things from people. And a
Mhm.
lot of people try to tell us what to do. They try to fix us. They try to tell us to get over it
Yeah.
and move on.
Yes,
Um,
right.
and to your point, I try to empower people through grief, which is why I call it the Empower
Mhm.
Grief Journey, because
Yep.
like you said, when we can relearn to trust ourselves, and I
Mhm.
mean this to anybody going through grief right now, just blank out on what anybody told you. If your heart
Mhm.
and your mind say yes, that means go. If they say
Mhm.
something's off here, that means no. Um,
Mhm.
give yourself that space to trust yourself because
Mhm.
as a recovering people pleaser, as you put it earlier today,
Yeah.
when we're in that place and everybody's saying, do this, do this, do this, and you keep on
Yep.
following that path, you step away from who you are and you forget who you are. You don't make
Mhm.
decisions for you, you're making them for other people.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's where you further sacrifice and further hurt and further traumatize
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
So give
Mhm.
yourself that step up edge to reclaim your life, reclaim your power, take it back. Say, I'm going to go
Yes.
my path. If I make a
Yep.
mistake, it's fixable. Don't even worry about
Right.
it.
Right. Yes. Everything is figure outable. And yeah, and it's like if we can learn from our mistakes, if we could learn from what we might see as failure, like that is the most important thing. It's not about never making a mistake or never failing. It's can I learn from this? And can I learn the lessons that I need to learn? And I think that's why we often keep repeating the same patterns over and over. It's like, because I didn't learn. I wasn't, it's why I kept binging for so many years. I would, restrict during the day, try to follow this diet, binge at night, and then wake up the next day and be like, okay, I just need to restrict harder now, for real, no carbs. And it's like, it took really breaking that and actually learning from that binge, having the willingness to face it. And we've got to do that with life events. We've got to do it with through grief, through divorce, through jobs, through dating, through break, like all the things. Yeah.
That's well said. I think that's the real power, that when we're able to face those coping mechanisms we have, and it takes a lot of practice, I'm sure, like you just said, you're going to have times where you're really good for a week or two and then you slip up, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay though. That's where most
Mm-hmm.
people, guilt and shame and blame themselves, and I go, you're a human being. You're going to make mistakes. It's just what it
Yep.
is. And when you
Yep.
give yourself that space just to say, like Goggins says, like, I messed up. It's okay. Start over.
Yeah.
He has this mindset that I love. I try to teach this in grief too. He has this mindset about scratch. He goes starting from scratch, and he said, when I
Mm-hmm.
hear people say they failed, what I actually hear is first attempt, second attempt, third attempt. I don't hear
Yes.
the word failure, meaning you dropped the ball and you screwed up. You're a bad person because you made a mistake. I hear you tried and it didn't work, but you're doing it again, and maybe it's
Yep.
going to work this time. And
Yep.
when you live in that place of scratch, I'm just starting over from scratch again. He calls it making scratch your best friend. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I embrace that a lot because grief is not linear, man. It's like
Yes.
this.
Right.
Just like
Right.
you said, it took you, 6 months ago or something. It took you, 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
to move through something. Happened
Mm-hmm.
again 3 months later, took an hour to get over something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Respecting that process of yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean respect, but like giving yourself permission to notice
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
change and notice that your growth, and say, you know what,
Right.
took me forever 6 months ago, 3 months I got really good at this, month one now I'm really doing it well. You start
Yeah.
you start rewiring this thing that says I'm a mistake and screw up, to I got this, I'm making progress.
Yep. Yep.
And that's powerful at that point.
Yes. And that's all any of us really want, right? Is like to feel good about ourselves, to feel self-love and empowered and confident and like we can figure this out. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Jillian, I this has been such an honor to have you on this podcast today. This has been just awesome talking to you. I love your mindset, just about what you've gone through with eating and binging, and even going through divorce, and to have the mindset you do through that process that a lot of people see as a very toxic and damaging situation to things. But to see you come out of that a much better person, and taking it from lessons and gifts and blessings, I mean, that's just inspirational and powerful. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your story. I also want to ask you this. So every guest on my show, I ask this question at the end of my podcast. If you run into somebody that is just starting their grief process, or maybe somebody who's stuck in grief, what are one or two things you would tell them to help them navigate that just a little bit easier?
Yeah. So where I start with clients typically with this is like full permission to allow and to feel. And I think one of the hard challenges around grief is like sometimes maybe we feel like we're stuck in a pit of despair, or we're like we can't see an ending, we don't see hope, we don't feel any different, like we're just stuck in kind of this downward loop and we're just spiraling in negativity. And so I think part of it is allow yourself to feel all the emotions, feel them all the way through. And then it's now we think about like we start to add on one or two sentences of like, and I'm so grateful for this time that I had with this person, or I'm
Mm.
so grateful that I had this job and the ability to impact these lives. Or we start to look at like the like one small positive thing. And the way that I think about it is like if we have grief and we've got, I'm going to call them negative thoughts and emotions
It's okay.
of like things that we don't want to feel, right? Typically, things that we tend to be resistant to. If we're holding on to 80 strands, it's can I take one strand and put it down and pick up one positive? And if every day we're putting down one strand of something that is keeping us stuck, and we can pull in one place of like, here's how I'm grateful, here's how I'm proud of myself, here's how I'm making progress, we're going to start to build up positive like more positive emotions and positive self-talk. And we're going to see, instead of feeling connected to maybe the person that we lost through pain and agony and suffering, we're going to be feeling connected to them in a healthy way, with positive memories, with stories, with how they made us laugh, with how we felt in the good times. And so it's giving yourself that permission to also like see the bright side without being forced into it, right? And this is where it's like you take your time, you go at your own pace. Nobody is going to tell, like, people can try to tell you and shame you for like you should be over it, you should get on with your life. And it's listening to those moments when you're like, and now I'm ready. Like you might be crying for weeks on end and then you decide, and now I'm ready. And there might be a day without tears and then you're back to crying again. And that's okay. It's like really allowing yourself and giving yourself that permission and just noticing, am I really allowing it? Is this keeping me stuck in a place where I'm spiraling in negativity versus being able to find my own empowerment and be able to get out?
That is well said. I absolutely love that bit of advice. Just giving yourself permission to be there. That's the big one that I think a lot of people in grief don't always recognize or even understand. And to hear somebody else say, you have permission to be here today, I think
Hmm.
that's a big
Hmm.
empowerment tool. I
Hmm.
also wanted to ask you as we close up the podcast, where can people connect with you and find you?
Yeah. So you can find my podcast, Hungry for Love, on Apple and Spotify. You can also find me on Instagram. I'm Jillian Amadea. And then my website is bodyyoucrave.com. So those are all great places to connect. And yeah, I'd love to hear feedback from anybody listening. If you've got feedback on the podcast, questions, comments, anything like that, definitely come find me on Instagram. It's a great place to chat, send me a DM, or comment on any of, I'm sure we'll be sharing different episode links and things, so comment on that. And I'm happy to have that conversation or to explain something more clearly if you're like, okay, I got this, but this didn't quite make sense.
I love that, Jillian. I'm going to be posting all your links in the description boxes with the podcast so people can click on those links and get in touch with you if they want to. But I think that'd be
Perfect.
really awesome. I'm encouraging you guys to connect with Jillian. She's a very awesome person that I met recently. And I love to run into coaches, by the way, that just have this life experience that you have and to help people through these everyday things that we go through, but create finding those depths and those purposes in
Yeah.
those journeys and help us really release the inner self that has been suppressed over time. I think you
Yes. Yes.
I think you do a
Yeah.
great job of that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. This is wonderful. I think you've been like one of the best hosts, and it's just been so fun and natural to have this conversation. So thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. I want to thank all of our listeners for joining Jilly and I today on this episode of the Empower Grief Journey. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody that you know could benefit from Jillian's story. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. I want to invite you guys to follow our podcast at empowergriefjourney.com. I want you guys also to know that you're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.